Well, Eric Sutter,
Yep.
race director of Open Range Gravel Race.
That's right.
Founder of the race. I mean,
Yes.
you and your wife, right?
Yep.
So,
Yep.
tell me about it.
Yeah. So this will be our 7th year, which is just kind of amazing. Like when you think about it, it does. It goes by so quick. So a little bit about myself. I grew up in small town Kansas, about an hour and a half west of Wichita, a place called Pratt. And just south of Pratt is an area called the Gypsum Hills. It's not like the Flint Hills. It's completely different. It's an area where you would not believe is in Kansas. It's red dirt, buttes, mesas, canyons, and it's a fairly decent sized area down there. So that's that was kind of in my background, knowing that area. I'm in the military, so I was about 8 years ago. I was stationed in Kuwait, which is a place that has a lot of sand, but we had some bikes and got to ride that. So, but while I was in Kuwait, I'd hurt my knee just prior to going. I'd been kayaking. I did a lot of kind of the MR340, if anyone's familiar with that race.
Yep.
I was active in that for several years. And so I had this kind of combination of liking endurance type of events. And I'd wanted to actually put on my own kayak race, and I thought I'd do it down in Wichita. And so I kind of had that in the back of my mind of developing a race and that race director kind of mentality going on. So back to Kuwait, and I'd hurt my knee. Although I'd started running was kind of out of the cards for me. So I got into cycling while I was over in Kuwait.
We have a lot of that around here. Like former
runners,
marathon runners, and cross country athletes and things like that. That's like, this is a lot smoother.
Right, it is. It is. I had an orthopedic surgeon tell me, you probably shouldn't run if you want to keep walking. Yeah. So I was like, duly noted. He's like, biking's fine, but so I'm in Kuwait, and I started cycling there. They had just cheap Mongoose mountain bikes that they would rent us. And so I was riding that all over in 120 degree temperature. In my full uniform. So, I mean, that's pants and long sleeves. And so heat usually doesn't affect me too much because I've been used to it. Yeah. And while I was over there, I started doing some research on Dirty Kansas, Now Unbound, some other races, and I just thought, man, what if I just rode my bike? I didn't even think about a race at first. It was just, what if I rode my bike down at Pratt, went down to the Gypsum Hills, and then rode back. And there's a little smaller town down there called Sun City that's just a church and a bar. That's it, just a church and a bar.
Good variety.
Right, the only things you need. So that thought process then kind of kept developing, and I was thinking, well, what if I changed it from just a ride? What if I had a race? And then it was one of those things that got in my mind, and it wouldn't leave. And so like I'd go into work, and I'd find myself like watching YouTube videos at work, and this again, it was in Kuwait, watching different things, and like just kept doing research, and it was that thought that just wouldn't leave my mind of okay, you need to put this on, right? And even though the timeline was going to be really tight, the thought was it needs to be this year when you get back. Oh, wow. Yeah. So the great thing about the military is it's taught me how to plan, and it really the military decision making process is a great way to develop a plan, develop a business, whatever it is, going through those steps. And so I essentially did that. I went through the military decision making process to create a plan for a bike race. And what
we can expect if we go
right? No, it's very regimented. But what it did is it created about a 40-page PowerPoint, 40-slide PowerPoint. And so, and again, I'm not sure. I've never been to a bike race. I've never seen a bike race in person at this point. Still, I've done, like I said, a lot of kayaking, so I knew knew the kayaking world, excuse me, and I knew from what it looked like that a lot of the gravel racers looked like the kayakers that I dealt with, that I experienced, and so it looked like the same type of people. And so I created this 40 slide PowerPoint, and I sent it to our friend Wade, and waited. And like a couple days later, I contacted him again. I was like, "Hey, Wade, did you see my proposal on this race? Like, what do you think?" And he's like, he kind of gives me a hard time. He's like, "Man, that was 40 slides." Like, yeah, I think you got it covered. Like, he's like, "Yeah, looks good." So, so the great thing about Pratt, even though I hadn't lived there for almost 20 years, it's such a small town that I know almost all the people there. And so when I started making those contacts with city people and county people, they're all people that I had grown up with or knew their kids when I was in high school. And so it made things super easy. And they were super excited to get it going and get it started. So
sweet.
So I came back from Kuwait in March, and in April, like 6 weeks later, was the race. So it was like just like that. And we had a lot to do because I didn't even have a route. I mean, I had an idea, but I hadn't like looked at any of the roads in person in a long time. So it was a matter of going out there and kind of checking the roads out and talking to landowners, because that's one of the things that I wanted something a little bit different and getting some landowner permission. And so we go on some private property and that was key.
So let me rewind just a minute just to get that timeline a little more like just succinct. How much time in Kuwait were you planning this?
I started it's probably in November.
Okay.
Of the year prior.
November through March.
November
back in March. So 4 or 5 months of planning, ideating, like visioneering this whole thing. And then 6 weeks to like implementation once boots are on the ground.
Right. Yes.
where you can actually see your course options. Okay.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. So, and again, my goal before we held the very first open range was to at least go to and participate in a gravel race. Like that would have been and there's a series down in Wichita called Rage Against the Chainring.
Yep.
And unfortunately, I think it was the Cheney, which was a really windy race in 2018. I was sick that day, and so I missed out on it. So, and it was like the only day the only race that was going to work prior to open range. So, So by the time we had our very first open range, I still had not been to a gravel bike race. So it was my very first bike race that I attended, was the one I put on. Sweet. So, which is not the way to do it. I'll tell you that.
So the filter you're putting it through is like, well, every bike race should be like this one because that's the one I made.
Right. And it did allow for a couple things. Because I hadn't been to a bike race, I didn't have a preconceived notion of what a gravel bike race had to be.
Completely outside the box. There was no box.
Right. And so, I looked at some videos and watched some stuff. And so, I wasn't trying to make it like somebody else's. It was, it was our race. Yeah. So
just do what feels and looks and like just make it your own.
Right.
I like it.
Yeah.
So why obviously the Gypsum Hills, like your childhood, I guess growing up out that way, you knew about it. But what else was it that made you really gravitate toward gravel and not some other either mountain bikes or road bikes or anything?
Yeah, I think I had some friends that did dirty cans at the time, and that so that kind of steered me in that direction. And then just looking again, watching YouTube videos on some of the races and seeing the type of people and how much they reminded me of the kayak world, and that kind of so that was probably why I went towards the gravel. And I live out in the country, and so like with gravel, I can hop on my bike, go out the driveway, and I'm on gravel right there. And so it's and that was one reason. Then I kind of veered away from kayaking, is because kayaking was getting to be so time intensive, going to different places and having a ground crew Because unless you're on a lake, if you're on a river, you've got to have somebody pick you up at the end. You can't really go upstream. So yeah, I like the idea of just being able to leave from my house and go on a route and do that.
That's what kept me as a road cyclist for so long, is just the convenience of, I didn't live near gravel, so I just roll out of the garage and go. But man, it's a whole nother adventure and experience. So
yeah, I can leave my house and do a 20-mile route and maybe see 2-3 vehicles. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, sometimes none.
See more animals than you do cars.
Right. Yeah, many times.
Yeah. So I mean, that's all the practical, the logical, the why part of it on that side. Yeah. But why, what does it do for you now? Like when you go for a ride, other than fitness and going out and, just doing a ride, getting miles and stats. And all that, what else? What else turns you on for it?
Yeah, it's similar to I don't know. We have about an acre and a half that I have to mow. And so to me, it's very similar to when I hop on the mower and I start mowing. It's just a time to, kind of let the mind go, work through problems of the day or the week or whatever. Yeah. So it's interesting because I've got, several friends in the area that ride gravel, and some are even close to where I live. And it's like, hey, we need to get together and ride. And I do like riding with people. I do group rides. Yeah. But for me, riding gravel sometimes is just about getting out, and so many times I leave just kind of impromptu. Yeah. And so it's I don't want to have to call somebody or wait or whatnot, because I just want to go out and get some miles in and just think. Yep. And there's been times where I've been in a bad mood and basically just I want to punish myself today and ride hard. So
I can relate 110% on that. That's where it all came from. So cool, man. I think a lot of us have that same story. Yeah. As far as what cycling does for us. That's what Bike It Out means for us. That's where the shop came from. That's when I discovered it, and I was like, man, I gotta do this. I gotta do something to share this with more people. If you've ever heard our story, that's the line that comes out. I got to figure out a way to share this with more people, and a bike shop seemed to be the way to do it. But I was out on a bike ride by myself, had a bad day, went out, and I was like, man, nobody's asking me questions. Nobody's bothering me with problems. Nobody's doing it. It's just like me and the road, and just silence and the ability to just think. And it was like, wow, okay. It finally
there
clicked,
it was.
Right. So very cool. Yeah. Well, let's dive into the tactical, the technical, all the stuff that these folks are hungry to learn about and know about, so that they can go and discover as much adventure as they possibly can on, to real quick cover, gravel is it's one word that covers so many things. There's all these other terms like hero gravel and princess gravel, chunky gravel, whatever. There's so many different. Gravel is kind of just whatever you want it to be, really. If rail trail stuff is what you call gravel and that's what you want to go, you just absolutely love it. Yeah. Sweet, that's your gravel. If you don't want to ride on anything that's at all smooth, and this is you have to have something like this rig to just survive, then awesome. If that's your gravel, then go get it. Right. But, I'm excited to see where it can lead. It's it's not new, but it is new. Still, it's still growing. It's still being realized. And a lot of people who have ridden for a long time that still haven't, kind of dived into the depth of it. Yeah. And I realized too, as we're talking and saying that, gravel riders were a lot like the kayakers, and I didn't really explain what that means. Okay. But for me, both communities are just essentially just, hardworking people that want to do a hard thing and test their bodies kind of thing. So, they're not, from what I've experienced, everyone's willing to
lend a hand, help you out, not make fun of you, or encouraging you to start in a new sport or whatever. So there's very, very few egos in the gravel community. So it's and same with the kayaking community that I was in. So that's what really as well kind of drew me into that sport.
And I just thought of another question too, and we'll get to the questions, I promise. The part of the discussion that when gravel kind of first became more popular was the fact that it was the leave your computer at home, don't care about the stats, get the UCI out of it. Like, we don't want all this big stuff coming and controlling. This is all grassroots. This is, we're just going to buck the system and go do our thing and ride our bikes and have fun. And then that caught on and got fun, and a lot more people saw it. And so it's starting to get bigger companies, bigger business support, like World Gravel Championships, all that stuff. I guess, give me your opinion, or like, what is, you kind of probably have been through a little bit of that transition with your event. So what does that look like? I mean, one, we've got some great sponsors. We've got some big sponsors like Trek, and some other companies. But we're still very grassroots. That's one of the hard things as a race promoter, race director is getting sponsorship. No one wants to give you, just fork over tens of thousands of dollars and stuff like that, unfortunately. Still waiting for it. So, or even $1,000 is difficult to come by. But great companies provide some great products. Where and kind of what you're referring to, I think, is kind of the corporate side of gravel. There's what people refer to as corporate gravel and grassroots gravel. Whereas the corporate gravel there's a couple companies that have built races essentially, and kind of, if you want to familiar with like the Ironman races concept. So these companies come in and promote their own race, and I think there's a place for it. People are willing to pay the money for it. Usually those are going to be a higher dollar than a grassroots race. And as I was actually watching GCN the other day when I was on my trainer, and it kind of brought up a funny story, and I'm going to tell it, but I'm going to have to just wait for me to finish the thing. But they were talking about a story about a race bib maker, and he sold his bibs for, I don't know, $60, and they were decent bibs. Well, then a company like Rafa comes in and starts charging, $300 for, not 3 times or 4 times the bib quality. And so somebody asked this small bib maker, well, what do you think about that? That somebody else is coming in and selling these for a lot more than you are. And he basically said, I've got no problem with that, because now I can sell mine for $120, twice as much, and still be under what the other company sells for. So not to say that we jack up our prices or do that. And I don't know of any grassroots that has done that. But there's a place for. But it adds some appeal to the grassroots.
It does
for people when they see the higher entry rates.
Definitely, it does add appeal. And it brings people into the sport. Whether it's a CEO of a company that wants to do those grassroots races, that wants to rub shoulders with ex-pro riders and stuff like that.
Okay.
Hopefully they also then will come and do some of the grassroots, but it's bringing awareness to cycling. It's bringing people into the sport. So, and on my social media, I give them a hard time sometimes, the corporate gravel scene. But overall it's good for cycling.
Cool. Awesome. Well, let's dive in.
Yeah.
If I can get this thing to open here. Okay. If you don't hear your question, don't be mad at me. It just means I missed it somehow, whatever. There was a pretty common theme in a lot of the questions, though. So I think we're going to cover most of it. If I do miss it, then when we get toward the end and we can do some live Q&A, let me know, ask your question. So what are the main differences of road and gravel riding?
Sure. So I don't do a ton of road, and what I do when I do ride road, it's on my gravel bike. So that's so don't think that you need to have a road bike if you want to go on a group group road ride. Your gravel bike works just fine. So the main differences are going to be your terrain, of course. Unless you're on Hero gravel or Princess gravel, you're going to be in some different terrain. And as you mentioned, gravel is a very broad category. So you could have sharp Flint Hills gravel. You can have the gravel around here in Miami County is just more of that chalky, usually not too bad gravel, especially after some cars have driven on it for a while. Or down in Pratt, where open ranges, we have the finest gravel. And I mean that because it's like almost sand sometimes, so it's very fine. But even then, like, depends on the weather conditions. So, has it been raining a lot? Has it been dry for months? And that's going to change everything. Okay. So terrain, bikes are a little bit different. So this, of course, is not really my gravel rig. This is more of a ultra endurance type of setup. It's a hardtail mountain bike with a fixed fork. But gravel bikes are going to look like road bikes, but have a little bit wider clearance. And then conditions, what I've found is, on a road ride, I guess roadies don't like it when it rains. Apparently. So
I can ride indoors on a rainy day.
Yeah. and I get it. I mean, I haven't ridden, 28 mil tires to know how on wet,
slick, wet asphalt, right? Yeah.
So, but on my gravel bike, I've got 38s, and it's a smooth tread, but they take me just about anywhere.
And in all fairness, I have one bike right now, and I have 38 super slicks on it, and it's fine on the road.
Yeah.
And they're a little bit lower pressure, so it's a lot more comfortable. Don't notice the cracks and the potholes near as much. It's a great road bike.
Yeah, it is, and I ride that, and I do group rides 1 to 2 times a week in the spring, summer, and fall, and I ride that with the 38 slicks, and have no problem keeping up with the crowd.
Cool.
So.
Well, that kind of leads us in good. I'm sure everybody's kind of wondering, like, what the heck is a 38 slick or a super slick or what? What are you talking about? Not talking about firearms. So what's the best tire size, tire pressure, tread style, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of just a smooth tread. Okay. I really am. I've gone through a gamut of having knobbier treads, and now I've just kind of been on smooth tread. So I've had it in muddy conditions. I've had them in dry conditions, of course, whatever. So
does the slick tend to shed mud better?
I feel it does. Okay. Yeah, it's definitely easier to clean out when you do get into those issues. I sat in a talk very similar to this probably 6 years ago with Kurt Shellman, who's the CFO of Chamois Butter.
Okay.
And that's what he rode at the time, and I almost didn't believe it. And it took me probably a couple iterations of tires to get to that point. And he's one of his things was that people are concerned about turning and cornering in those slicks. And what he said was, you do slow down, you go slower, but the speed you gain on that on the straightaways and stuff will make up for slowing down on that. So, cool. So I actually have 2 wheel sets. I have a 700C and a 650B wheel set. So depending on the conditions, I may swap and put the 650B in if I'm going to do chunkier gravel. So 650B is going to be a smaller diameter wheel, and it's going to allow for wider tires. So generally, for me, like I said, 700. So a 700 C wheel is the same as the wheel that's on here, essentially. 650B is going to be a little bit smaller. So for 700, I'm running 38s. For 650Bs, I'm running 47 millimeter wide tires, or in that range.
So that's 700. When he's saying smaller, it's shorter, like less diameter wheel. So it's going to sit lower, but it allows you it keeps it farther from the frame, so you can put a fatter tire in there that'll still fit.
Yeah. So. Yeah, and even those 650Bs, they do have some traction on them, but again, it's going to be a very minimal, smooth, fairly smooth, fast rolling tire.
Do you feel like when it comes to the tread too that I've noticed with some riders, they don't need it, but having that little bit rougher tread, knobbier tread, mentally, they feel more confident, so they ride better.
Yeah.
So they ride looser. They're not as tight. Have you seen anything like that? Or
yeah, I would buy that. I think one thing that kayaking helped transfer over to bikes is staying loose on a skinny kayak. If you're rigid, you're gonna take a dip. Yeah, you're gonna tip over. So it's keeping the hips loose.
Okay.
And I found the same thing when you start getting into some squirrely conditions on a bike. If you're rigid, you're gonna fall over. Yep. And if you can keep it loose and keep pedaling, then you're gonna usually maintain it. And I've had some near crashes where, I mean, the only thing I could say is that it was back to kayaking that probably built in the muscle memory of just keeping it loose and let it ride.
Cool.
Yeah.
I like it. Staying on the tire theme, tubeless.
Yes.
Tubeless
Definitely.
better? Is
Definitely.
it required?
It's not required. I've got no trying to think. Yeah, I don't know that I have any experience riding really. I'll take that back. I've ridden tubes, but I probably have less than 10 miles on a bike with tubes on it. Otherwise, it's been tubeless. I'm glad you got some wood up here because I'm going to say something that I've not had a major issue with that. That's as much as I'm going to say. I did burp a tire. So with tubeless, you've got no tubes in there. You've got sealant. And that sealant is supposed to, if you have a puncture, seal up and keep you from going flat. So all that air is between the tire and the rim, essentially. I was on a race in the Flint Hills last spring, and I hit a bump. It was called like baby head gravel, so I mean it was huge. I didn't see it. Hit a bump, heard a hiss, and I was like, "Huh, that's kind of interesting." And I was just like, "I've never heard that before," but okay, kept pedaling. I was noticing like it's getting really hard to pedal this thing. Like I was starting to go slow. It was starting to get kind of in the heat of the day, and so finally I stopped and I checked my front tire and it almost had like, I don't know, 5 PSI or something. I mean, it was basically flat. And so I carried a little mini pump and got out and pumped it back up. Had no issues, got into the next checkpoint. They had a floor pump, put a little bit more air in it and didn't have any other issues with it. So I'm a big proponent of tubeless sealant. Yeah.
Awesome. If you guys have any more questions about tubeless, shameless plug, Tony is going to be hosting Tubeless 101 on February 3rd. So not this Friday, or not this Saturday, but next Saturday, right here in this room, going over all of the ins and outs of why and how and the benefits and all that stuff. So if tubeless is a new thing for you and you're really curious, let us know and we'll go over that.
There'll be free autographs also.
The Tony Stegman from Hugoton, Kansas.
Oh, Hugoton. So, very good. All right. Yeah, I'm very familiar with that.
Tubeless. Okay. What should I do to prepare my bike?
Yeah. Have a good tune-up. If you don't know how to do it yourself, of course, go to a qualified mechanic or bike shop. Definitely recommend that. Checking things like chain wear, something you may not think about. It's very, very simple to do at home. There's a little tool you can get, and YouTube's great for figuring out how to do some things. But if you don't feel comfortable with that, take it into a bike shop.
Yeah. It's a good way to get in trouble sometimes.
It is. Yeah. I've been to some spots and be like, oh, great. This is not good. But preparing the bike again, that's what I'd say is make sure, one, you've got to prepare yourself too. So you've got to make sure when you're doing gravel, because it can be isolated, that you know how to change a tire if you had to, or put in a tube if you had to. Even though I'm tubeless, I still usually carry a tube just in case, or how to break a chain if you had to, and go single speed if possible. So I'd say those skills right there changing a tire, putting a tube in, or breaking a chain are probably some of the biggest skills you could probably learn. And it's funny. I was on a charity ride, and a guy who's not very experienced was on this charity ride, and he was having an issue with his shifting. And I'm riding up next to him. I'm trying to look down and see, which is really difficult to do as you're riding and trying to diagnose a problem. And we didn't have much further to go, which is good because he was kind of drifting back. And we got in, and like one of the pins on his chain had like snapped, and so like it was I don't know how the thing was staying together. Yeah, I really don't know how it was staying together. And so I was like, great. I wonder, if he's got a quick link, because really that's all we needed was just take the one out and put a quick link in. Yep. And again, he's not very experienced, but he's like, hey, I got this. And he pulls out this bag, and it's got quick links. It's got a chain breaker. It's got like everything you need. He's like, I saw this. He goes, I ordered it like, next day shipping on Amazon, and it came in, and he's like,
no idea what to do.
Exactly. He's like, I did watch a video, but I've never done it before. I'm like, okay. So it was really surprised. I mean, I was super just excited that he had that stuff with him, and yeah, and we got it fixed and got him back on the road. So
I'm going to use that story now. A lot of times, like if new riders come in and they're looking at bikes and what do I need? We have our flat pack that we get them, and they're like, well, I'm not going to change my own tire. Like, I don't know what I'm going to bring it to you. I'm like, here's the thing. You're going to be on the side of the trail. Somebody else like me is going to ride by. If we have different size tires, if you have everything you need, I will help you. Like, it's just a law of cycling, right? Like, if I don't, then I'm probably going to get a flat like in 100 years.
Right. It will come back.
Happen,
it will get you. Yeah.
So, like, if you have this, even if you don't know, there's somebody that, whether it's an event or just a ride or a group ride or whatever, as long as you have the things you need, you don't have to be an expert at how to use them. Just have them with you, and somebody's going to help. Yeah. That's the thing I love about the cycling community.
Yeah. Extra batteries.
Yeah.
was it like an eye contact? It was like,
Make sure your batteries are charged.
Yeah. And carry extras, carry spares. So
as far as keeping parts like clean and from snapping off, right? Down at the Mid-South is usually where I hear the most stories, because the Oklahoma clay just it starts out as a muddy ride. By the end of the day, it is not mud. It is like basically concrete, and your derailleur is not going to be happy. Is there any tips? Or
Sure. A couple things come to mind. One,
Pam, like a can of Pam.
What I've seen, and I'm guilty of it myself, but if it's raining, keep riding. It may sound counterintuitive, but if it's raining, keep riding. Because I tried to impress that on Unbound riders. Was it last year or year before, when it was kind of raining? Maybe both years. But yeah, because when it's raining, it's keeping that viscosity of the mud more lubricated than thick, chunky. It's then starting to get into that peanut butter stage. So when it dries out, when it stops raining, is when it dries out. So if you can make headway while it's raining, that's the best thing to do. You do want to still watch, because and also with that rain, it'll help wash off anything that's getting in your derailleur. Yeah. So that's the biggest tip I'd say, is if it's raining, try to keep riding. And then I carry, some people carry a paint stirrer with them to kind of scrape off tires. I actually just carry, it's like 99-cent drywall putty spatula. And that's what I use, because it's like that big, very small, lightweight plastic thing that just I can put in this top tube bag or whatever, have it in my jersey pocket. Yeah. And I just use that little spatula to scrape mud off. And on bigger races like Mid-South, there's usually a hydrant or somebody will have out, and if you get a chance, spray and wash things off.
Pit stop or something.
Yep.
Do you? I lost train of thought on what I was going to say about the muddy stuff.
Mud. Snapping extra parts, maybe.
Yeah, I mean,
I've carried an extra derailleur hanger. Yeah, not an extra derailleur, but an extra hanger.
What's in your backpack? That's my next bike.
Yeah, exactly. But again, on that, knowing how to break a chain and make a single speed is a great asset.
Yeah.
What would be the instance that you would need to do that if you kink the chain or something?
No, if your derailleur breaks and you can no longer shift.
Or if your hanger snaps
yeah,
dangling,
it's not super common, but it's not uncommon. It happens. It can happen quite a bit. And so instead of just being helpless on the side of the road, you can actually break your chain, shorten it, and then make it a single speed.
Just pick the gear you want to be in,
and be yeah.
Awesome. So I think another question was how to keep my bike clean and functional during the ride or event. That's kind of went through that on the same. What do I need to bring? We've covered a few things there. Obviously the tools, quick links, extra hanger. If you don't know what a derailleur hanger is, we can also cover that. It's an amazing little piece that keeps your frame from being your bike from being a single speed forever. What else would we want to bring?
Those are the big things. And I've been on races where people didn't have a multi-tool. So have a multi-tool, know how to use it. And if you know, for me, before I got into cycling, a multi-tool was like a Gerber or Leatherman kind of thing. And so the cycling multi-tools are a little bit different. So have that multi-tool. My multi-tool has a chain breaker on it. It's got actually tire levers on it as well. Have that, know how to use it, have a spare tube. And sometimes, like I said, I've had a spare derailleur hanger. Those are the big things. Have water, of course. Have water. But then if it's muddy conditions, then have that scraper, whether it's a paint stirrer or a putty knife kind of thing. Those are the big. And like I said, if you got electronic shifting, then having the batteries and spare batteries. And I've seen even on a Di2, so I have Axis on my other bike, but I've seen somebody have Di2 and they had it was like a catastrophic battery failure. Like it just went out. And on that, I don't know how to fix. I mean, we end up making her bike single speed essentially.
Yeah. Good. Now they're a lot more accessible. Their batteries are inside, right? So on a Trek Damani has the nice little, and the checkpoints have the removable cover on the frame underneath your bottle cage, and batteries right inside there in a little clip. So you just reach in there and do what you need to do, and it makes it a little easier. It's still not fun. Axis does kind of win the battle on just clip, take off, put another one on, clip, you're done, put it in your saddlebag and run for it. So at least it's improving. That technology is just, it's amazing how fast it's happening.
Yeah.
The speed and the accuracy of the shifting is getting better. It's just wild. And it's getting easier to work on as well, which I'm thankful to the manufacturers for doing that, because sometimes, for a while it was interesting. What changes if you're going to ride a mountain bike?
Yeah.
What changes do you need to do to the mountain bike in order to get prepared?
Yeah, I'm a big proponent. Like whatever you have, bring it and ride it. I've seen, at open range and other races, I've seen people ride the whole thing, or I've seen somebody ride on a 26-inch mountain bike. So 26 is the size of the wheel, so even smaller than a 650B or a 27.5. I've seen people do it on that. I mean, I don't think it was a Huffy, but it was not a very expensive bike. So I've seen people on fat bikes. So
hybrids.
Hybrids.
That's another question down the way here a little bit, but it fits into this.
Yeah. Your hybrids are going to be usually a little bit heavier, but it's all doable. And now. A lot of races, and we're one of them, have gone to having an e-bike category as well. So I don't make it competitive, because I think that's just kind of taking the spirit out of what a racing what racing is, but we at least have a category.
Everybody's going to be in turbo, so
right. So because I want to, if it's a race, I want it to be about the person and not having extra advantage. So, but we still allow them to ride, get the swag, come across the finish line, all of that stuff. And so yeah, even e-bikes are welcome in a lot of races now.
Yeah, cool.
So.
On the mountain bike subject, just for me personally, thinking like the way you've got yours set up, you have a rigid fork. Most hardtail mountain bikes, or like full suspension, probably the least fun to ride, I guess.
Right. So so full suspension, if you think about it, you want your power, so turning the pedals, you want that to go towards speed, towards moving forward. The more suspension you have, whether just a front suspension fork or a full suspension bike, that bike is moving. That moving is coming from somewhere, and that's coming from your energy pedaling. So, so full suspension, you might see one or two at a race, but they're going to be at a disadvantage if you can get, if you have a hardtail or a hybrid. If you want to put a fixed non-suspension type of fork on it, that's possible, and will maybe increase your speed a little bit. But if you have a suspension fork and can lock it out, for most races, you could probably ride it with it locked out, or locked and not need the suspension on it.
Cool. Do you have a recommendation for the best app for finding good gravel routes?
Yeah. So I've seen a couple out there, and at least where I'm at, the accuracy is not the greatest on identifying which roads are gravel or not. The best app or website, I guess, I found to figure out which roads are gravel is just Google Maps. Okay. Zooming in on satellite view, Google Maps. I know it's not the easy button because you have to kind of plan your own route. And that's what I do. I'm fortunate again because I live out in the country, so when I go out my door, I'm in gravel, and I know the roads well enough now to ride from there. But that if you want to look for routes, I'm a big fan of Ride with GPS. That website for me as a route designer, it was the best hands down when I went through all of them. I went through Garmin, I went through Strava, all the big ones that you can think of trying to do some routing, and Ride with GPS was the easiest. They're not a sponsor or anything like that, so I'm not saying that because they're a sponsor. They're not a sponsor, but I actually pay for their pro plan, and that,
we found that to be more useful on dropping pins and points of interest and making turns and so when we plan out some of our that's the easiest place for us to find them.
And it also allows you from Ride with GPS, you can save it in almost any kind of format that you would want. You can save in GPX. You can make it specifically for like Garmin kind of computers and stuff. So it's the best one that I've found.
Okay. What's the difference between one of these type events versus a standard weekend group ride on gravel?
Yeah. So, one, competition, I guess, if you're looking for it, you're going to have that competition. You're going to have more people, which can also be good and bad because you might have less experienced people than in your group ride. So you've got to pay attention for that. And just the atmosphere, I think, having a bunch of people out there trying for something new. You're going to see a new area. So if you come down to open range or you go to any other races, it might be in an area that you're not familiar with. So that's one thing, like, because I just love the terrain down there. I try to tell people is like, hey, don't forget to look up. Because so many times you've probably been on your bike and you're just like looking, 20 feet of the road ahead of you and you don't look what's left and right. Yeah. So, for me, it's not always about the speed, but like enjoying the view and enjoying the scenery and stuff like that. So, and then you get some cool swag usually at them. So, another t-shirt to put in your closet and whatnot. But it's all.
That's a whole nother subject.
Yeah.
So on that same thing, are all gravel events a race?
No, there's some that are like fondos. There's some that are more like charity rides and group rides and stuff like that. So they're not all race, and not everyone goes there. Even at the ones that are races to race, I'd say 90% of the people know they're not going to get on a podium or anything like that.
Yeah.
And so that's for me as a marketer, race promoter, race director, however you slice it. That's the people I advertise to, that I market to, or the 90% of the people that aren't even going to be on the podium. That's who's coming to my race. For me, it makes no sense to spend time and effort trying to. And I want to have, I do want to have those fast people, and I do want to have those people on the podium. But I really enjoy having the people that know they're not going to make the podium and just want to come out and finish and do something hard and complete it.
Yeah. I know some of the most memorable stories that people have. There's a ton of memorable stories from these events. Just it's a challenge in some way usually, but it's the faster riders make it fun for the riders who aren't going to be on the podium. Because I don't know how many people have told me, like, I thought a 4-wheeler was coming behind me and it was the lead group coming through, and man, those guys were flying. Like, it's just cool to be in that when
it is.
They're either doing a longer distance and they've now caught you, even though they left before you, and it's just like, oh my gosh, these guys are hauling. What is going on?
Right, and and I want to say that I really appreciate we have some tremendous some riders that come out, and some of them have been coming out for several years that are just top. I mean, they're top guys in the field and gals, and they're amazing. And like you said, like this year at Unbound, I was by the zoo, which was kind of on the rollout out of town, and the lead group goes by, and I mean, it is like a big truck. I mean, going by. I mean, you can feel the tire noise. Yeah, the tire noise, and you can feel the wind go by as you're standing there. And it's neat. Yeah. It's a neat scene.
Cool. All right, next we have, how can I safely gain or maintain speed on gravel?
Yeah, so first off, know your skill level. Know where you're at in the scheme of things. You can find yourself if you're not.
I've got a story for you.
Oh, good. Yeah, you can find yourself in a group that you maybe are not, shouldn't be in. So know your skill level is the biggest thing, and then watch out ahead. Like what's ahead. If you can't see that far ahead, like on the gravel, because you're in a tight group, then if your skill level is not there, then that might be a time where you slow back and you join a different group. If your skill level is there, then again, you may not be able to watch the road, but at least watch the cyclists up ahead, several riders up, and watch what they're doing, and be ready. Just always be thinking, even when I'm driving down the road, I'm thinking, hey, what happens if this driver does this? Or what happens if that driver does this? Yep. And so how am I going to react to that? Same thing on cycling. Be thinking, what happens if a rider in front of me, crashes? Where's my out? Where am I going to safely get off to the side and be able to avoid getting involved in a crash? So that's the biggest thing is, know your skill level and then be watching ahead. What's your story?
I think my story actually applies more to the next one here. Oh. So like, how should I position myself for downhill safely and or turning on gravel? Yeah.
So again, I'm going to refer back to Kurt Schellman again. And one thing he said, and this is what's great about, if you ever get a chance, I don't know if he does any more talks or anything, but again, stuff from like 6 years or 7 years ago that I still remember, but don't bomb the downhills. Is what he says. So don't bomb the downhill, especially if you're in the Flint Hills and open range, because in the Flint Hills, a lot of that sharp rock and everything collects down in the bottom area. Open range, because our roads can be a little sandier at times. some of that thicker sand collects in the low areas. So, yeah, don't bomb. Don't, again, kind of back to the last question, know your skill level. Don't go too fast. Okay. Same thing on turns. As we discussed with the slicks, I go a little bit slower on turns. I say try to stay a little bit loose, and just kind of know, if I start to feel the bike sliding out, and as you get experience, I think you start to develop that sense, like, when you're new, you don't know anything, right? You don't know the difference between when your rear tire's losing traction or when it's fine until you fall over. So don't let falling over stop you from figuring out where that point is. So, just, for me, again, it's going slower. If I feel that rear tire start to slide out, then I'm going to straighten out my turn a little bit. And if you're in a group or if you're on a race and you've got riders all around you, then that's where you got to make sure where your line is and where their line is, and making sure that you're not going to crash into
cross lines. So quick version of my story. So roadie, most of my riding life. First gravel group ride ever been on. I was like, I'm going to demo this bike that we've got here at the shop. It's the new Checkpoint aluminum version. When it came out, it had 32 like R1 tires on it. 32 millimeter R1s are like just a slick road tire, like no tread whatsoever, just slick. And I'm like, well, if it comes with it, let's find out what people are going to experience if they just buy this bike off the floor and leave and they think they're going to go ride a Checkpoint on gravel. I don't know what to expect. So we go on, at the time it was called Ride Southeast, and now it's the kind of the mix of Tony, what are we calling? Road trip gravel. Java Journey stuck in my head. And I'm like, I can't get it out of it. So it was like one of the first Ride Southeast rides. There's about 7 or 8 of us, and all really strong riders, right? And then the guy who's leading the ride, Ted, great guy. He's on a single speed mountain bike. Dude, he's a beast anyway. But he's also just out to have fun. So I'm on these 32 slicks. Everybody else is on like 40, 43s. And I'm like, all right, this will be fine. I'll be fine. We get out to a couple spots that are just like hard pan, nothing on them. Climbing was fine, but anything that was on it was like super marbly. So we get over to the downhill side, and that's when I was like, oh, this is not what I got. I don't know what I got into here. And I'm just like skating all over the place, and like there's zero traction. These things are at like 85 PSI too. So I'm like hard. I'm just running like this
feeling everything.
This is what I'm just going with I'm taking this thing stock off the floor. I'm not going to try to be smart about anything. I'm just going to take it.
Yeah.
And there was a couple times I was like, I'm going to go in the ditch. Like, this is going to hurt. This is going to hurt. Here comes the ditch. I'm going sideways. I'm trying. I can't hit the brekes because I'm going down hard.
Right.
And pulled out of it. And one of the times Ted comes rolling by and he's like, man, that looked awesome, dude. You were like, and I was like, oh, thanks. In my head, I'm like, that was everything. There was no looseness going on there. Everything was just like rigid. It was 32 slicks on hard pan, loose grab. No, don't do that.
No, and on that, make sure you've got good equipment. Make sure you've got a good helmet.
Yes. And know your skill level.
Right. Yes.
Don't go ride your first group gravel ride on a bike that's not equipped well with guys who are I'd beat them up the hill every time, and then they would just bomb right past me and then kind of wait. This is great. Anyway.
Yeah, and that's a segue real quick. The what you think might be the fastest bike on the road, on a road bike, is not going to be your fastest bike on gravel. Comfort, as you found out on that, I'm sure plays a big role. So, where you might think thinner tires are better, no, not really. Thicker tire, wider tires. I think it's Ted King says, ride the widest tire you can fit, essentially.
Tony says that too.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, we answered a couple of the training differences. Like, how should we plan differently than if you're used to doing a lot of the big either charity rides or fondos that are paved rides, right? 60 miles, 100 miles. It's totally different regardless of distance.
Yeah.
What's the difference in training?
Yeah, for me, it's just consistency, getting out there. Like right now, I'm kind of a fair weather rider sometimes. So like I'm on the trainer, I'm on Zwift, riding.
I'm right there with you.
Because I don't like to be cold unless I have to. And
heat's one thing, but cold,
right. I can deal with the heat. Yeah. The cold, my extremities turn into like ice cubes. It's very, very difficult on me. And somebody said it's never the weather. You're just not, you don't have the right equipment. Yeah, exactly. So maybe that's it. I don't have the right equipment. I just got to find the right heated gloves and heated socks that will keep me warm. But yeah, consistency. As far as distance, because a lot of the gravel races and rides are going to be a longer distance than what people are used to. Not that you necessarily need to do that distance ahead of time. I never rode 550 miles until I rode 550 miles in a stretch. I never kayaked 340 miles until I kayaked 340 miles in a stretch. So you don't have to do that whole distance. Even if if your race is, you're doing a century gravel race, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to do a century before then. It would help. Yeah. And a century is definitely, I think, for most people doable. But just getting out there, what I found is just consistency. If you can get out there and do, I don't even know what the percentage of that event, what you'd need to do, but just getting out there on a consistent basis and getting experience on the roads, the conditions, but just getting your body used to riding consistently is the biggest thing.
And I think the thing I found too is by getting out there consistently and getting your body used to it, you learn your body as well. And so when you're in that event that's a longer distance than what you normally do, you can understand what your body's telling you. You understand how to pace yourself. You know that. And I use 20-mile chunks.
Yeah.
That's like mentally for me, it's just if I can do 20, I can do 40.
Right.
Or I can do 60. Or I can do 80. I just got to pace myself right and know that I'm not going to feel the same in the fourth 20 miles that I am in the first 20 miles.
Right.
And if I start the first 20 feeling like I'm feeling fresh, let's do this. Stop
No.
it. Shut up. Tell your head to just shut up on that. Just take it easy, pace yourself. But doing that consistency, you're going to learn what your body's telling you because you're going to have good days and bad days. And if you're in the middle of that longer ride and your body's telling you something about being a bad day, just turn it down a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of it is mental as well. In longer distances. You brought up a good point in that, like, one thing I do, and I know other people do, is breaking that race up, checkpoint to checkpoint. So, for us, we have a 100K, which ends up being about 68, 69 miles. But at mile 35, there's a checkpoint. So when people are like, I don't know if I can ride 68 miles, I'm like, well, you don't have to. You just have to ride 35 miles. And then you just ride another 35 miles. And you're done.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that, and when I've told people that, they're like, oh, okay, yeah, I can do that. And it brings it down to a level a size that we're comfortable with, right? And once you get, and yourself, and once I do 35, I've done 35 miles before. I've done 20 miles. I could probably do 35. And once you get to that checkpoint, like, okay, I'm still alive, right? So I can ride myself home.
It reminds me of, do you know who Ed Milet is?
I don't.
He's kind of he's a motivating kind of guy. He's not a motivational speaker or anything, but he has a book that's called One More.
Oh, okay.
And he has a phrase that he calls One More. Kind of takes that same thing. If you're going by checkpoints or you're going by segments, it's like, I just do one more. I can just do one more. He says that at the gym. Nice. That story came from his dad. Had been an alcoholic and quit drinking. And he's like, Dad, are you going to be able to stick with this? He said, I don't know, but I'm going to do one more day. Nice. So just a good mentality. If I can do this, I can do one more. I can do one more.
Yeah. Very good.
Any training rides that specifically like people are using to train for your event or any of those other events leading up to them?
Yeah, I think just, what I've used is try to get into as many kind of races and group rides as I can, getting that consistency. So for me, there was a series of races, in the spring in Wichita, and I think they've kind of gone back to just one race now. But that Rage Against the Chain Ring were good ones because it was starting in March, and every couple weeks they would have another race. They're very low cost, so like that sort of things. We don't have for open range. We don't have any like train rides or anything like that. Part of it for me is because I live almost 4 hours away from where the race is. that it makes it very difficult to get down there and do those kind of things. But find groups to ride with. You've got one here at the shop.
Yep.
There's other groups all over Kansas City to ride with, and getting out there, getting consistency, getting used to riding in groups, because in a gravel race you're going to probably start in a group, and so there's some dynamics that happen with that, and learning those dynamics. What group road riding has taught me is essentially how to draft and use that group as a wind block and different
I highly
things.
recommend learning how.
Yeah. And we've got very good in the group that we ride with, some really good cyclists in there. And one of them, and again, I'm still fairly new in this, especially in group riding. And he would be like, "Hey, get over here, get right here." When I was struggling, and sure enough, he'd put me in a spot and be like, "Oh, this is a little bit easier." But learning how to ride and ride close to somebody and do it safely is an important key.
Quick question for you guys: Has everybody here kind of had like that friend who's been riding longer than you that kind of coaches you through that stuff? I just kind of feel like that's the cycling community. Like for me, all of this came from my brother-in-law, which is funny. Like he'd been racing for a long time. I went for a ride I had gotten a bike again, and I knew he was racing, so I wanted to go ride with him, but I knew it was like no chance in keeping up. And he was like, "Get over here. Why are you out there? Get over here." I'm like, "Well, I don't want to run into you." He's like, "Don't worry about it. Get over here behind me."
Yeah.
And I literally about ran into him because it just pulled me right over and about ran into his rear wheel. It works. The drafting works. You just learn that distance and where your spot is at and how you feel in it.
Yeah. For me, it's Bill. He does a good job of telling you where to be and and do that. So
cool.
Yeah.
And we've got guys like that in our community as well. If you guys come and you're in like the enchilada ride or something, depending on what group you're in, there's tons of experience like in all the different groups. So you just never be afraid to ask for help, guidance, ask a question, whatever. And you can kind of tell the guys that are experienced and are willing to answer the question. I mean, you can tell. I don't know how to describe it, but never be afraid to just ask somebody. Everybody's usually willing to help. So I think that's all we have for submitted questions. Is there anything else you wanted to cover, or we can open it up to a handful of...
Yeah, I think we've... if there's any questions that come up, it'll be fine.
Anybody... We missed anything?
Tire pressure.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
We did. I mentioned it, but
I skipped over that one. So depends on weight. For me, and I weigh around 150 to 155. I'm usually around 30 psi for tubeless. So if you're running tubes, it's going to be different. But my experience is just tubeless. So 30 psi on a gravel tire. On this, the wider tires you go, the lower tire pressure you can run. So on this, I may run down to between 22 to 25 psi. So
Tony.
SRAM has a good website.
Oh yeah.
As far as just guidance on where to start.
Yeah.
Share that with anybody that wants it.
Great.
Yeah, we share that quite a bit. What about like as you go up in weight? Go up in pressure?
Yeah, go up in pressure. Okay. Yeah, as you go up in weight. Yeah. Or, and I would say like 25, if this wasn't loaded down, if you've got a lot of weight, if you're doing a bike packing trip, then you might want to increase the PSI for that extra weight that you have on the bike, not just you as a rider.
Okay.
So, but yeah.
Anyone else? Yeah.
This was more of a how-to put on a gravel bed, but you've got, what have you found as far as getting the sponsors? Like Trek is a pretty sponsor.
Yep.
To me, you've got the corporate sponsors out there. And you've got like local businesses, big businesses in Kansas City. Small businesses.
Yeah.
If you break it down into groups, what are some keys in getting those sponsors?
Yeah, and this is just my experience. Again, that's the one thing, and I hate asking people for money for things, right? It's just, even growing up, when I was in Scouts and trying to sell popcorn, like my parents were just like, you know what, like we'll give you they didn't want me going out and
Right.
hassling people. So for me, I'm very uncomfortable doing it. But and for anyone trying to think about putting on a race, like no sponsor that I've found really just wants to give out money. They'll give out some product and stuff like that, which is great, and everything. But yeah, trying to get those sponsors to buy in can be difficult too. So most of our sponsors provide product basically in lieu of cash, which is fine. We're at a level that is kind of, with our entry fees, is kind of self-sustaining. So like we can manage what we have, but the prizes from our sponsors, what it's great is that we can then provide a fun way for people to enjoy something and learn about a product. And the sponsors that I get are products that I either use or believe in their kind of philosophy in a way. So all the sponsors on our list on our website and everything are ones that are products that I found to be beneficial and have used. Because I don't want to have a sponsor of a product that I've never, and like, yeah, here you go. Here's,
Never used it, but
right.
they gave me $1,000, so I want to talk about it.
Yeah. So, so we've got those kind of corporate ones, but then, in Pratt and Medicine Lodge, we've got some great companies as well, a local bank and things like that help out. So, if you are, so it just depends. Some people look at, as business owners, look at what's the ROI, what am I going to get back for giving this product or giving this money? They want to see that positive ROI. The good ones realize that may be a negative. They may not get back anything out of it.
Directly, anyway.
Right, directly out of it. But what they're doing is they're encouraging the sport. They're getting people out there. They're, so yeah, they may not get any direct monetary benefit from it, but they're indirectly going to keep people cycling, hopefully.
Yeah.
So.
Cool. Good
Good
question.
Yeah.
Mike?
I had the downhill gravel kind of question for confidence, or I thought I'd heard that if you're not staying on the saddle, that you might need to change your center of gravity, either front or back, or any thoughts on?
Yeah, I mean, what I'd say going downhill is being center to back of the bike, and kind of keeping. As you're braking, you don't want to, of course, brake with all of your front wheel, but you don't want to brake with just your rear wheel either. You want to kind of equal pressure on both as you're descending if you need to. But yeah, keeping that weight mid to back and low is kind of the best thing. And again, sometimes depending on how steep it is, I might rise up off the saddle. Like that's natural. Because I feel like I can move a little bit and I can kind of keep loose if I need to. So, do you have any other?
No, that's exactly what I would think. Keeping, just like in mountain biking, staying. That's why they have dropper posts on mountain bikes, is when they're going downhill, they can drop that post and lean back and kind of go back and forth and follow the bike a little bit. And a lot of gravel bikes are starting to have dropper posts. Starting to see those coming around. Driftless checkpoint comes with one, which is nice. And Nate's got his sitting out there if anybody wants to just oogle and awe at the topographical lines in the lettering and inside the frame bag, and it's a cool.
It's gorgeous. Yeah.
So does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to add that going on downhills and even uphill things is going back to knowing your skill level. And I'm going to tell you, there ain't no shame in getting off and walking up or walking down.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, I've walked hills before. I remember the first time I had to walk a hill, and it was at a race up in Excelsior Springs, and man, it was like he put every single hill in that area on that course, and I was good at it because I was like, man, I've never had to walk a hill, and then I got to that one, and it was, there's a lot of people walking, but yeah, exactly,
Yeah, cool. Any others? I have a couple things bubbling up.
A Trek? No, the one you have.
I didn't pay him to say that.
The one you have, right? The one you have is
The one you're comfortable on.
yeah, the one you're comfortable
confident
on, right? Yeah, is the best. So I like my gravel bike for gravel events, and it's got drop bars on it. I've been in this sport long enough. I kind of rewarded myself 2 years ago and bought a bike that I wanted to last for a long time. And so that's not in everyone's cards. I get it, but I ride it a lot, and I wanted something that would be comfortable and kind of see me for a long time. So I like that bike for gravel events and shorter endurance events. But like this bike, I would have no problem, riding this anywhere. I've removed all the bags, and I've ridden this on a road ride, a road group ride, and stayed up at about a 19 mile an hour average, over 20 miles. So, so it's
like Craig.
So it's doable. But yeah, the one you're comfortable on is the biggest one. To carbon. So it depends on where your money's at, I guess. Carbon is going to be usually lighter than your aluminum bikes. From what we're seeing, like they're lasting. If you have an aluminum bike and you want to make a little different change, but you don't want to buy a new bike, you might look at carbon wheels. You might look at, Redshift makes a kind of a suspension stem to kind of help take out some of the chatter of the gravel. But you could just make improvements like that. So if you've got an aluminum bike that you really like, look at getting new wheels. Maybe if you want to try a different shifting system, if you want to go to try the electronic shifting, might be something to look at as well.
Do you prefer a 1x or 2x?
I like 1x. And it's funny, I've had conversations with people. I'm kind of an analytical guy, so like I understand numbers, and numbers don't really lie. Like they are what they are. Because people say, well, you get more range out of a 2x. Well, half those gears are overlapped, so you're not using the preference. The only thing I can say for a 2x is you may have a gear if you just have to be in a certain cadence, then a 2x might be what you need because there are more gears, more selection, not as big of jumps. But for me, I don't need that. Have to have that cadence and be right on. So I like 1x because it's simple. Yeah, and like this thing. I've got a 36 front chainring, and I think the cassette is a 10 to 51 or 52, whatever Shimano. Is it 52?
I think so, yeah.
So 10 to 52. And I've even done the math to be like, okay, if I had a subcompact 2x cassette, what would that equal out to? And it's this thing will go faster than most 2x's, and it'll climb more hills than most 2x's. So it's. For me, I like the 1x. On my gravel bike, I've got a 44 front chainring and a 10 to 50 cassette on the back. So
cool. It's a 51.
The 51.
Just,
okay.
yeah.
Perfect.
Not that
You counted it real quick.
I'm kind of analytical. But the little engraving on the top of them. Yeah. Are you okay with a higher cadence?
I can be. Yeah. Okay. I'm usually between 80 and 90 is probably my average. But
let's say if you're on a 36, it's not getting any smaller than 11 or 10 on the back. So if you're keeping up with a 2x with a 36 on the front, you're spinning a lot quicker than they would be. Yeah. I've stuck with 2x so far because I haven't found a setup of a 1x ratio because I like the bigger front ring, but you just generally can't get it with the frame shapes and finding something that works with it, and I haven't found that yet. But,
Yeah, and
but
I
I
did
never used the smaller rings.
right. And that was
operate as a one bike.
Yeah, on this bike, couple of the upgrades or changes that I made to it. One was the rigid fork, the cranks and the chainring on the front. That's a 36, so that's the max chainring that a Pro Caliber will take, because I wanted that extra top end speed on it.
Yeah.
And then
they're generally stock out of the box. They're like a 28 or a 30.
I think so. So those are the big changes on this one. Like I said, my gravel bike having that 44 front chainring and a 10 to 50 cassette, I feel like that's, for me, is just perfect. Like I'd have to spin out, I think is like 30 something miles an hour. So like I'm never going that fast. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I still got I've walked hills even with that 50 cassette, 50 tooth cassette on the back, but yeah, that one works well for me.
Yep.
One thing on the 2-bike, like I'm still old school 2-bike. I want to be in that RPM, and I like to bog down hills. But more things can go wrong when you're 2-bike. So I've been in thunderstorms, mud, where Pratt earlier was very cranky, didn't want to work. So more things can go wrong if you're going to go 2-bike.
Yep. Yeah.
I will say, if you do run electronic shifting and you have a 2x system, you've got an extra battery up there that you could switch if you needed to.
Yeah. At least on the axis
right.
side.
Yes.
Yeah.
And unless they both go dead. then you got an issue. Yeah.
Anybody else have anything? The thing that was popping into my head, we talked about equipment. We talked about, loading down, bike packing a little bit. Won't spend a ton of time here, but we're super excited about some stuff that we have planned for this year. Like our theme for this year is adventure. Like every one of us here, we just kind of like looked at like, just freaking have an adventure, man. I'm ready. Nice. It's been a wild few years just across the board in the world, but in the bike industry especially. So all of us that have been here at the shop, we're like, it's time for some fun. We're going to freaking have some fun. And it's the year of adventure. So what, like, as far as I see your saddlebag here is much larger than what you'd see on a normal road bike or something. You've got a handlebar bag.
Yep.
What do you haul in there? What do you use it for? Why?
Yeah. So combination, and I didn't pack this up like I was going on. I mean, I put the bags on there. I told some people earlier, this front handlebar, a lot of this is just to kind of show you what you could do. I've never used this bag, but I got it. One thing I told myself several years ago was that, if I don't ever buy the equipment, then I won't ever take the adventure. Yeah. So you've got to make that purchase to at least give yourself the opportunity to go. And maybe you will, maybe you won't. But if you don't have it, then you won't. Yeah. So there's things that I bought ahead of time, hoping I would have the opportunity to go on that adventure. So, but yeah, I've never used the handlebar bag, but I could see myself doing that. This is actually, the fork is actually an 1120 adventure fork. So I could get the little basket carrier on there.
It's my zombie apocalypse dream bike. I want that thing so bad.
And I have used that. I did use that on the first time I did the cannonball race.
Okay.
But yeah, in the upper, kind of up here in this, we call it a gas tank bag because it's similar to like a motorcycle gas tank. But up here, I'm going to have like my snacks that are easy to get to, easy to digest. I may put my phone in there. And that's about it. That's going to be full of just food and maybe my phone if I don't put it somewhere else. This kind of feed bag up here can be several things. I've got my water bottle in there right now. I try to keep a minimum of 3 water bottles when I go on any kind of endurance event, and maybe carry a hydration pack like that orange mud up there. But if I don't put the bottle in there, then that's another good place for throw a phone in. Other snacks are easy just to reach into and get. As you go back, the bag that's underneath my saddle on the front side on the that one, if you look, is actually not how they designed that bag to be on a bike. It's supposed to go the other way. turn down.
Get in the way.
It gets in the way. And where the straps are, it didn't work out. And so I moved it. So if you have stuff, before you send it back or say it's not going to work, just experiment with trying it in a different position and see what works.
And try it on a short ride before you just go on the adventure.
Yeah. Yes. As you will find out, that thing rubs my leg wrong and creates a hot spot. So yeah. So that one's turned out. I think actually Lael Wilcox, if anyone knows who she is, I think she does the same thing with that bag. And then in the saddle pack there, that's great. It's got usually that's going to have like stuffed in the very bottom. You want to think about when you open it up, what are you going to need right away? So and pack kind of that way. So like in the very bottom of that, I've got like a tarp, a very small tarp, and some other things that I may not need or get to. May not need to get to. May have like extra arm warmers or sun sleeves or knees or whatever that would go in there. And then I might, closer to the top of that, I might have a little jacket or something like that goes in there. Okay. In the big frame bag, usually I'm going to have, I think it's a 20,000 milliamp battery. It's either 10 or no, I think it's 20, like 20,000 milliamp battery, because I don't run a dynamo or anything on this. So everything that powers like my GPS and my light, my batteries, if I was running Axis, I've got to charge somehow. So, and I want that battery down low for weight reasons, because it's a fairly heavy battery. So it'll sit kind of in the bottom of that. And as big as that frame pack looks, the inside is for some reason 10 times smaller than what the outside of that bag is. So it fills up quick. So I might in that put, an additional jersey, or at least bib shorts. And then I want to leave room for kind of long-term snacks or food in that as well. Okay. So maybe enough room for like a sub sandwich or something to go in there to where I can pull that out later.
Yeah.
So
your endurance races, what's the range of mileage and time that you're going to be spending in something like that you're needing this kind of a... So
the races I've done for like this type of bike would be like 400 miles, 550 miles. And those races, it depends on your goal. So while my goal wasn't necessarily to try to, be the fastest, I want to see if I could do it without sleep for some reason. So yeah, the 550 mile race, a friend and I did it, and we slept, I think it was 4 20-minute blocks. And that was over like a 2.5 day period. So we would just set an alarm, would close our eyes, set the alarm for 20 minutes, wake back up and hop on the bikes again and keep going.
Tabitha can tell us a little bit about that probably.
What's that?
I said Tabitha, my wife, could tell us a little bit about that from this year, her adventure with our newborn.
Oh yeah.
So
was it that long?
20 minute blocks of just like, what's going on?
Yeah. Right. 400 mile race I did. I didn't sleep at all during that one. So that was, got on the bike and it does simplify things for packing, because I don't need a tent then. I don't need a sleeping bag. But yeah, you find out if you're doing those endurance races, you find out some kind of, what restaurants. It's a lot of pre-planning, because you got to figure out what's going to be open, at what time you think you're going to get there. And then if they don't,
there's some motivation.
Yeah. What's kind of neat, on the Cannonball, it's a very small group, maybe 20 to 30 riders, and we all kind of know each other. And and even if we knew someone was behind us, we've been at gas stations that have closed and we knew somebody was right behind us that was not going to make it before they closed. So we'll buy stuff and kind of set it out for them, and they at least get something there. So that's the kind of community that it is.
This is again a great example of just the cycling community at large. So.
Yeah. I've bought numerous gallon waters and just left them out, because I know more people are coming by to that they could use
at least refill.
Yeah.
Awesome.